Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be showing and discussing the result of our report based on 10 countries we selected and the correlation between institutional and economic development.
The degree of institutional development is really high for Australia. For almost all the institutional indicators, they have close to perfect scores, showing a very healthy country, principally in economic freedom and regulatory equality, for which Australia has the highest data. This country does not seem to have any clear institutional weaknesses, but could improve political stability and balance. Australia belongs to the high income group in the level of income classification, with an income per capita higher than 12,695. The level of inequality measured by the Gini index seems to be adequate, meaning there are no severely disproportionate groups. France has a similar case to Australia, having high institutional development but being politically unstable or having some violence due to the 56.6 in that indicator. For this country, the World Bank classifies their economy as a high income as well. Analyzing the Gini index, we can also see that there is an adequate level of equality with no great disproportions.
Nigeria's degree of institutional development is very low. Amongst the countries we've selected, it ranks lowest for many of the categories of the grey indicators. This includes economic freedom, rule of law, political stability and absence of violence, government effectiveness, control of corruption, and regulatory quality. Regarding the country's income level and inequality, it is classified by the World Bank as a lower middle income economy. The GNI per capita is $2,000 a year, which is the lowest of the countries we've sampled, and it has a Gini index of 35.1.
Latvia's degree of institutional development is medium high. The gray indicators are quite healthy, most of them ranging between 70 and 80, and relatively high scores for indicators such as rule of law and economic freedom. Nonetheless, the country scored 76 for government effectiveness, which is not critically low, but neither as high as countries such as Norway and Australia. The unemployment is around 10%, which is not a really good signal, considering 4 to 5% is usually seen as full employment. According to the World Bank, Latvia is classified as a high-income economy, with the GDP growth rate average being 3.4 and a GNI of around 18,000. The Gini index is 35.6, which indicates a relatively acceptable level of inequality, signifying that there isn't a critical income gap among the population. Peru's degree of institutional development is low, with a lot of the gray indicators ranging from 30 to 40, signifying underdevelopment. Political stability, government effectiveness, and control of corruption score low, ranging from 30 to 40. This suggests an increased change of political instability and politically motivated violence and terrorism. Voice and accountability also has a relative score of 54, meaning that citizens perceive their freedom of election, expression, and media as low. According to the World Bank, Peru is classified as an upper middle income economy, with the GDP growth rate average being 3.4 and a GNI of 6,030, which is low. The Gini index is 42.8, indicating a relatively high level of inequality too.
Looking at the United States, we can see that it has a high degree of institutional development, and its gray indicators range between 72.1 and 88.46. Some of its institutional weaknesses include economic freedom at 72.1 and voice and accountability at 72.9. But most strikingly, its greatest institutional weakness is political stability and absence of violence, which stands at 46.2. In terms of the income level and inequality, the United States is considered a high-income economy with a Gini coefficient of 41.1, which is in the beginning territory of a large income gap. Looking at Thailand's degree of institutional development, we can see that it's medium-high, and its gray indicators range between 24.5 and 63.4. Its institutional weaknesses include control of corruption at 38.5, voice and accountability at 26.1, and most importantly, political stability and absence of violence at 24.5. Looking at its income level and inequality, it's considered to be an upper middle income country, and its Gini coefficient is 36.4, which is considered to be at adequate equality.
Japan is known to have a very high level of institutional development, with all the gray indicators being from 79 to 93. However, there are still some things they could improve, such as economic freedom, voice and accountability, and property rights. With regards to Japan's income level, the World Bank classifies them as a high income economy, meaning that their GNI per capita is higher at 12,695. Regarding inequality measured by the Gini index, it's 32.9, meaning that there's some slight levels of inequality in this country, but not big disproportionate incomes.
Norway's degree of institutional development is very high, and it ranks first place for almost all great indicators, where Norway has the highest data. This country does not appear to have institutional weaknesses. Of course, there is always room for improvement, such as economic freedom, where Norway lies behind Australia. But overall, Norway appears to have very little to almost no weaknesses. The level of income for Norway, according to the World Bank, is high-income economies with a GNI per capita of around $78, while the GNI index shows relative equality, meaning the country's income is not hugely disproportionate to some groups of the population. Mauritius has a medium-high institutional development. When looking at the great indicators, it is evident that Mauritius has overall good scores but could definitely improve to strive better. Nevertheless, in the State Fragility Index, Mauritius scores best with 0, meaning no fragility and most stable. There's a few institutional weaknesses which could be improved on, such as economic freedom, voice accountability, and control of corruption. The level of income for Mauritius, according to the World Bank, is upper middle income economies with a GNI per capita of around $10,000. The level of inequality in Mauritius is measured by the GNI index and is 36.8, which represents an adequate level of equality.
To conclude our research, we used the last question to further analyze correlations between economic development and the institutional framework in all the countries chosen. Is there a correlation between the degree of institutional development and the economic development? We started by calculating the correlation between the GNI per capita with the level of economic freedom. Here, we found a positive correlation of 0.67, meaning that for our set of countries, the higher the economic freedom, the higher the GNI per capita. Another insight we found once we had all the data is that the political system of the country doesn't fully associate with a specific level of income. For the open democracy, Nigeria, we do see that the level of income seems to be much lower, but there is no specific correlations between the GNI and the full democracies and the democracies as seen in this chart.
So in addition to this, we decided to see if there's any relationship between the worldwide governance indicators and the level of income classification. So we created an average of the governance indicators and we compared it to the level of income classification, both which are done by the World Bank. So what we can see here is that the higher the level of income, the higher the governance indicators, with an exception, which is Mauritius, being a country that has a 75 in the average of governance indicators, but still being an upper middle income economy. To make sure this is correct, we calculated the correlation between these two indicators to get a 0.90, which is almost a perfect correlation, meaning that the higher the income, the higher the level of governance indicators.